Welcome to my video about witches and fantasy role-playing games. I'm going to explain what witches actually are, perhaps clearing up some common misconceptions, and then I'll outline how you can create and use them to enrich your own games. Though I'll primarily be using Dungeons & Dragons game history and references, most of the information offered here is applicable to any game mechanics, fantasy or even modern, horror and sci-fi, because witches need not be limited to just one genre. I feel a factual historical exploration of the subject is important for the discussion. In this video, we'll also be taking a look back at some of the past attempts in official D&D publications to portray them. You might be asking, but aren't warlocks already in D&D, and isn't that just the name for a male witch? And isn't a wizard really a witch? The answer to both might be yes, however, it's a bit more complicated. Our first step is to identify what exactly a witch is and where the label came from. This will help us later in applying the knowledge to any game system, because the term witch is a relatively modern construct and was not used the same way in ancient societies as it might be today. Although the idea of witches being evil is now firmly etched into most modern cultures, in ancient times such depictions were not so common. In ancient Egypt, for example, magic, or Heka, was an integral part of daily life. Priests and priestesses who could perform magic were highly respected. They used spells, charms, amulets, and specially prepared herbs to heal, to divine the future, and to ward off evil spirits. In Celtic societies, the Druids were the learned class who served as priests, teachers, and judges. They were believed to have the ability to communicate with the gods, heal the sick, and see the future. In ancient Greece, the priestesses of the Oracle of Delphi were considered to be the most powerful seers in the ancient world. They were consulted by individuals and states alike for advice and predictions. From legend and mythology all around the globe, both benign and malevolent, there are just too many examples to name them all. But many of their reported supernatural powers are, however, very similar, if not identical. They are healers, prophets, transformers, royal seers, and they possess the power to command the elements. They are often wise and helpful figures. The perception of witches only began to change with the rise of Christianity in Europe. The church viewed witchcraft as heresy and linked it with devil worship. This shift was particularly evident during the Middle Ages and the early modern period, culminating in the infamous witch hunts and trials of the 15th and 16th centuries. The earliest recorded use of the word witch is in the law code of King Alfred the Great and the Laws of Alfred, which date to approximately 890 AD. In Alfred's text, he states, "If witches, diviners, perjurers, murderers, or notorious adulteresses are found anywhere within the land, they should be driven out of the country and the people cleansed. If they refuse to leave or continue their actions, they may face severe punishment or be forced to make amends to those they harmed." In Old English glossaries, the words used to describe witches translate to meaning diviner or soothsayer, which seems to indicate they filled the role of fortune tellers in Anglo-Saxon times. In the 15th century, the theologian Johannes Nider passionately warned against what he and other writers of the time called maleficos, a label used to describe what we today call a witch, a person who performed harmful acts of sorcery against another. Our present-day dictionary defines maleficos as an adjective meaning harmful, noxious, injurious, wicked, criminal, nefarious, and evil. He claimed these evildoers could control the elements, summoning destructive winds and enormous hailstorms. He said witches could make animals and humans sterile. He claimed the maleficus killed infants in their cradles, then dug them up from their graves to boil them in a cauldron, transforming them into a potion, which they then drank. Boiled baby. The fear and persecution of witches during this time was fueled by several factors, including religious conflict, social upheaval, and economic hardship. Notably, in the year 1486, just a few decades after the invention of the printing press, the most insidious and wicked book ever written about witches was published. This book is the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, or in German, Der Hexenhammer. The book's authors were Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, both of whom were inquisitors. As a side note, some sources suggest Jacob's name was added about 2 decades later, and he may not have actually had any part in the book's original authorship. The Malleus Maleficarum is a manual for witch hunters, and its publication played a significant role in fabricating manifesting, and spreading a profound fear of witches. The book claimed witches were more often women than men, creating a gender-specific stereotype that persists even today. And it instructed readers on the methods of identifying, interrogating, and convicting witches. The book established the elements necessary for witchcraft and claimed failure to believe in the existence of witches was an act of heresy against the Catholic faith. It also claimed that witchcraft was real because the devil is real, and witchcraft gained its power from the devil, which is a bit like saying Spider-Man must be real because comic books are real, therefore, duh. It was between 1550 and 1660 AD that Europe experienced the height of moral panic concerning witches, and as a result, thousands of innocent people were tortured and murdered. Shakespeare is believed to have written Macbeth around 1606 AD, and his portrayal of witches is certainly a reflection of beliefs common at that time, which was a mix of fear, superstition, and fascination. People commonly held the belief that witches, mostly women, made pacts with the devil and used dark magic to cause harm, sickness, and misfortune to others. Additionally, some academics believe Shakespeare tailored the portrayal of witches in Macbeth to cater to the interests of King James I of England. King James had a keen interest in witchcraft and the supernatural, and he even wrote a book titled Daemonology, in which the king expressed his belief and fear of witches. So what exactly is witchcraft? From a purely academic perspective, ancient people often needed some way to explain good or bad fortune. By assigning such events to a source, either a person allied with supernatural forces or by direct influence from supernatural forces, such as fairies, demons, or deities, it helped them feel like they had some control over their environment. If one could appease, exercise, defeat, or in some way interact with that which was responsible for the harmful or beneficial events in their lives, they believed they might alter both the effect and the outcome. For our purposes here, it is important to understand that in perhaps every ancient culture, witchcraft was only bad when it was performed by the other. In every religion, you will find examples of magic performed for the benefit of the faithful. Magic is only deemed harmful and evil when it is in the hands of those outside of the region's dominant faith. In many tales about witches, they are capable of flight. We might be most familiar with the witches' association with the broomstick, but they have also been known to ride pitchforks, shovels, animals, and in some cases, they are propelled solely by their own innate supernatural powers. Some historians suggest the image of witches flying on broomsticks might have originated from pagan rituals. In ancient fertility rites, people would jump and dance over fields with brooms to encourage a bountiful harvest. This act was seen as a way to imitate the flight of spirits or to symbolize the transportation of fertility energy. Another theory links broomsticks to the use of psychoactive drugs. It is believed that witches may have applied toxic substances such as belladonna or henbane to broomsticks and rubbed them on their bodies. Absorption through the skin or inhalation could have caused hallucinations or trance-like states, giving them the illusion of flight. And what about the legendary witch's coven? The concept of covens is actually more closely associated with modern witchcraft and neo-paganism. In reality, such things may have been fabricated out of fear, since the idea of witches gathering in groups or covens dates back to medieval and early modern European witchcraft trials. Back then, it was believed that witches convened in secret meetings to conspire and practice magic. These beliefs were part of the witch hunts and hysteria that occurred during that period. However, the historical reality of covens during those times is still a matter of debate among historians, meaning it probably never happened, at least the way it is often portrayed in fictional tales. Now, let's look at witches in D&D. The first time we hear of witches in D&D comes from page 11 of original D&D's 1974 booklet, Men in Magic, where it says, "The charisma score is usable to decide such things as whether or not a witch capturing a player will turn him into a swine or keep him enchanted as a lover." Then on page 39 of the 1976 Supplement 4 booklet, Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, it says the Finnish goddess Tuonela is an evil witch type. And for clarity and to offer a fact check, there are no Finnish goddesses by that name. The closest thing, and I assume the source of their error, is the Finnish underworld, which in their mythology is known as Tuonela. Tuonela is often depicted as a realm or realm-like place where the souls of the deceased go after death. It is a land of shadows and darkness, ruled by the goddess Tuonetar, who is sometimes seen as the consort of Tuone, the god of death. From Dragon Magazine number 3, published in October of 1976, there's an article titled Women and Magic, which is intended to expand on original D&D's book Men and Magic. This article tells us female wizards from 9th to 22nd level are to be called witches. In Dragon Magazine number 5 from March of 1977, there is an article titled Witchcraft Supplement for Dungeons & Dragons. The author of this article was unknown even to the magazine publishers. This article begins by saying, its origins long since buried in the mists of time, the full story of witchcraft will never be told. But it is certain that it held deep roots in even the most humble and God-fearing of ancient communities. The legendary powers and most secret wisdoms of its members could make an interesting and lengthy addition to anyone's fantasy campaigns. Their greatest contribution will be evident in the murky dungeons, where a single witch could make a corridor almost impassable or an enticing treasure almost unreachable. Later in Dragon Magazine number 20 from November of 1978 on page 11, we are given an article titled Another Look at Witches and Witchcraft in D&D. The author states that witches are fascinating enough that they would make a dandy player class, and D&D's first unofficial witch player class is offered. The text here says, just as magic users manipulate the otherworldly forces, whereas clerics worship those forces as gods, obtaining divine aid, so do witches make sure of the forces of nature worshipped by druids. Witches may be considered to bear the same relationship to druids as a magic user towards a cleric of his own alignment. The witch uses her harmony with nature to increase her knowledge and power. This article also tells us that it is true that a powerful witch can call upon some supernatural entities, even as do wizards, patriarchs, and druids. Historically, practitioners of witchery were and are both male and female, and the idea that witches are ugly is just more bad press. Working in harmony with nature and exerting influence over people requires a charisma of at least 9. We are presented with a powerful NPC witch on page 6 of Dragon Magazine number 43, and the article Brewing Up a New NPC, The Witch. This was written by Bill Mulhausen and revised and edited by Kim Mohan and Tom Moldbay. Later in that same issue, Tom Moldbay authored an article titled The Real Witch, a mixture of fact and fantasy. In his article, he states the word witch has several meanings. In popular parlance, a witch is a woman who practices magic. The woman is either an ugly old crone or a beautiful young girl. Often, because of her supernatural power, she can transform herself from one to the other. In modern occult parlance, a witch is an individual who practices a religion that supposedly traces its roots back in time more than 5,000 years. The practitioner of witchcraft can be either male or female. The practice itself mixes a large amount of magic in with its worship. He then tells us the word witch comes from Old English and is akin to the Anglo-Saxon word witten, which means to know, to learn, or to perceive. The words wise and wit have similar roots. Additionally, a witch was someone who possessed knowledge, a person with keen perception, someone who was wise. Such knowledge included supernatural knowledge and the ability to see into the spirit world. The knowledge a witch possessed would have included the drawing of magical symbols, particularly through the use of Germanic runes or Celtic ogham. A witch would also be knowledgeable about herbal lore and hence is represented by the person who cured wounds and healed diseases in the village in an age where medicine was still in its infancy. And not to recite the entire article, but he later suggests that in his opinion, a witch NPC class should include 1. The ability to use herbs for healing and magic. 2. The power of fascination, that is a kind of super charm ability. 3. A combination of both clerical and magic user abilities. 4. The ability to practice sympathetic magic. 5. Witches would be worshippers in secret of a religion otherwise forbidden in a particular area. And 6. Powers based on nature and the cycle of the seasons, similar to druidic powers. While witches would predominantly be women, the NPC class would not be limited to women. Now with 5th edition, the only official witches come from Barovia, featured in Curse of Strahd. I'm sure there are more examples, But to avoid extending this video beyond what is necessary, let's look at how this information could be useful to us in our present-day games. To create a witch character, they must, at bare minimum, be able to heal the wounds of others, and it's preferable if this power is linked to nature. This can be as simple as herbalism for good witches, or channeled through some malevolent supernatural force for evil witches. They should also possess some power of prophecy or scrying. If the game provides specific spells to do this, you want to choose those. But this could also be done by communicating with some supernatural entity, anything from a fae creature, a ghost, or an extraplanar outsider. Two more powers very common to witches is their ability to disguise themselves and charm others. In most stories, witches possess the ability to fly, either through their own power or with the aid of an enchanted item, like a broom. Powerful evil witches should in most cases be capable of summoning and binding extraplanar creatures, and they are able to transform their victims into a different physical form. For example, the witch might transform a hostile intruder into a harmless field mouse, or turn a rabid squirrel into a gruesome troll guardian, which they would then command through some form of charm. A witch would most likely be a non-lawful alignment and a member of the wizard, warlock, sorcerer, cleric, or druid class. You could create a bardic witch given their selection of spells, and there could even be a ranger witch with the commune with nature spell. A warlock is an obvious choice, but also a priest from some forbidden cult with the power of prophecy is a great candidate, as is a necromancer. I hesitate to get much further into character creation, since a witch should not be boxed into any mold more narrow than what we've already discussed. And how about these possible scenarios involving witches? It wouldn't be too uncommon for a barbarian tribe to have a witch advising their leader. This could create a lot of interesting adventure ideas. And consider a situation where your player characters have been hired by a local ruler to capture or kill an accused witch said to be trespassing somewhere nearby. But when the heroes finally locate the witch, who tries to fight them off, it is discovered that the so-called witch isn't at all evil, and the accusations made against them were mostly fabricated and exaggerated. The witch might be helping local communities and healing the sick, with their only real crime being their worship of a god different from the local ruler. What might happen if a good witch has been tricked by a demon? The demon may be playing the long con, presenting itself as a benign and helpful spirit, at first giving useful advice and assistance, earning the trust of the witch, only to later use the witch for its own evil purposes. This could be expanded on by a game master in any number of ways. The witch could be a sympathetic villain, and you could even create a redemption arc. Well, I really hope this information has been useful to you. If you would be so kind as to like the video and let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on the topic, it would be greatly appreciated. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our future uploads. I'm your host, Atten, here at We Love TTRPGs. Thank you so much for watching.